Congratulations, you got your first pair of trekking poles, but now what? Don't worry, today we will cover the top 3 things to know when starting to use trekking poles, when to use them, proper sizing, and how to use them. And don't worry if you don't have your first pair yet, I also have my recommendations for every budget at the end of the video. Let's dive into my testing grounds. Thanks for joining me today as we are discussing all about trekking poles, also known as hiking poles, as part of my Hiking for Newbies series. Be sure to check other videos in this series in the Deep Land Explorer YouTube channel. As with all my videos, timestamps and links to my gear of preference are provided in the description. Also, don't forget to be on the lookout for a little object I have hidden in the background as part of my ongoing scavenger hunt game for my subscriber community. Just be the first to mention it in the comments when you spot it. Hiking poles are not to be confused with your grandparents' walking stick and much less a walking staff. They are an indispensable piece of gear to any trekker that stands apart from the aforementioned items due to its unique anatomy and way of use. A relative new invention dating not much further than the mid-1900s, trekking poles owe their origin to the Scandinavian cross-country skiers, particularly due to training in not snowy months. From there, by the 1970s, they started to get ground with similarly trained athletes around the world, making a slow shift into non-sport related areas of outdoor life by the end of the 1980s. The hiking pole's design itself hasn't changed much since its introduction in the hiking market, with some brands making slight changes to the extending mechanism and providing lighter materials over the years. They are used by people of all ages in all sorts of shapes, off and on pavement. In this day and age, are still looked at by passerby with something more than an interested curiosity, a sense of mystery that comes from lack of knowledge on their uses and benefits. When to use them? Trekking poles are an extension of the hiker's upper limbs, essentially making a two-legged person into somewhat of a four-legged one, helping to distribute the weight of your body and equipment into more points of contact with the ground, and in turn reducing the effort needed to move it, adding stability and balance to your stride. For this reason, poles come handy at any point of a prolonged hike. Hey, there's a deer over there. 3 examples of them used as elements of stabilization regardless of the load carried in a hike are going on uneven terrain or steep inclines, be it upwards or downwards, when crossing creeks with potentially slippery bed or rocks, or as a way to reduce the impact of long walks on knees, lower backs, and other body parts. Some people choose to use them only when the trek is of more of a certain distance, while others use them all the time. Basically, there is no such thing as using them too much or too little, and in the end, it comes down to personal opinions. I personally like to have them with me on planned hikes, regardless of if I will cover a considerable distance or just going to go on a relatively short stroll. Having them doesn't mean I'll necessarily use them, but I can if I want to. Trekking poles are usually very light, not adding much weight to your gear. If anything, they become a problem because they tend to be cumbersome to carry due to their shape and size. But worry not, most of them can collapse to a size that will fit in a backpack. When that is not the case, some backpacks include ways to carry them, or they can be attached to others with rope, ranger bands, bungee cords, or even rubber bands. It might take a bit of resourcefulness on your part, but again, having them is a lot better than not to. Now, on to proper sizing. The first thing you need to know is that proper sizing is key for them to work properly. Sure, they will work regardless of how you set them, but you are here to learn how to use them correctly, right? So let's familiarize ourselves with the anatomy of a trekking pole. Materials and part shapes differ a bit from brand to brand, but for the most part, all poles share these components. A crown, a handle, be it a single or secondary handle. Secondary handle would be an extension of the handle down here. A adjustable wrist strap, a shaft, which is commonly divided in 2 or 3 segments. In this case, you can clearly see there's 1, 2, and 3 segments. An adjustment mechanism, remember this one for later, we'll get back to it. A basket that usually goes on the very bottom of the trekking pole, and it can be a low profile for mud or one for snow. The tip, which can be a rubber one, like in this case is a rubber one, or a carbide one, which in this case is hidden underneath the rubber one. For sizing, we'll focus on the operation of the adjustment mechanism, that part that I mentioned before that we will get back to. This can be done in most cases by either the rotation of the shaft or the application of the rotation of a ring or pressure release on a lever. In order to adjust the trekking pole, it's recommended that for level ground, you do most of your adjustment on the bottom part, using a little bit only of the top part as you extend the shaft to this appropriate size. This is done while standing up in a relaxed position. The tip of the pole must touch the ground, while your arm holding the pole must form a 90-degree, roughly a 90-degree angle at the elbow with your forearm parallel to the ground in this manner. And that's it. Sizing of your pole is correct for level ground walking. And you should lock the adjustment mechanisms at this point, taking care that the length of the shaft doesn't change as you do so. I'm no pro, just a geek with a passion for the outdoors, but have learned, as you probably know as well, that humans are asymmetrical, and while it looks like our left side is identical to our right side, that is indeed not the case, and in some instances the difference is more than barely noticeable. Knowing this, to make sure that your pole fits you right, it's important that the measurements that I just described are performed to each pole individually. Now, note that I said that the measurements are correct for level ground walk, like right here. This is because the length of the pole shaft has to be malleable with your height. As you move through different terrains, I highly recommend you adjust the length of the shaft accordingly. The new measurements can be done on the fly, but the concept is similar to that of level ground adjustments. Main difference is that the length adjustments are done mostly to the top portion of the shaft. Some examples. If you are going downhill, make the shaft longer to about chest height. This is helpful in particularly steep descents, taking pressure off of your knees. The goal is for you to be able to walk comfortably while keeping a straight posture and relaxed shoulders. Some hikers prefer to change the grip of the handles when the trail is too steep downwards, from a relaxed forward grip to placing their hands on top of the crowns while keeping the wrists still in position, helping themselves to slow down in this motion. If you're going uphill, the adjustment is to reduce the length of the shaft. While there is no magic length, it should feel like you are capable of walking naturally without having to repeatedly reach out with your poles too far ahead of you. Another example is while you are walking on uneven terrain, like the side of a hill. The adjustment must be done to both poles in different ways, making the uphill pole shorter than the downhill one. A good general rule is to keep the uphill pole at thigh height, while the downhill one at chest height. How to use hiking poles? As far as how to use them and proper form, I will refer to the old saying, an image is worth 1,000 words. Meaning that it's time for a demonstration, during which I'll describe usage and form. But even before that, let's start with how to hold your hiking pole. All trekking poles have a wrist strap. In order to correctly use your poles, slide your hand from under the strap in an upward motion, like this. And then, with a relaxed grip, grasp the handle. Now, I'll do it again right here. If you can tell that I'm holding the wrist strap and the handle at the same point by doing this motion. That way, if for some reason I lose balance and I have to let go of my trekking pole to stop my fall or something like that, I'll just do this. And it's very easy to get the pole back in the proper position. If you pay attention to the way you walk, you'll notice you move your arms in opposition to your legs. In other words, as we walk, when our left leg is forward, our right arm is forward as well, and vice versa. Same movement is required when holding hiking poles, but it will require some practice to get into the right step cadence. Now, there is nothing wrong with you if you can't get it right at first. The problem is founded in what experts call muscle memory. Let's put it this way. All your life, you have subconsciously trained your brain and body to walk one way. And now you need to make a conscious effort to retrain yourself. Since while the length of your legs is not changing while using the poles, the free movement of your arms is. By the addition of mass that, as minimal as it might be, still makes a difference. Also, your center of gravity has subtly changed. Enough, though, to throw off your brain's bearings. On top of that, now your arms are also making contact with the ground while still in an upright position. All in all, very minor changes, but as I said, enough when combined to need to retrain yourself. Once you have your step down, look for signs of pain or something feeling awkward. If that is the case, stop immediately and readjust your poles. Remember that the goal of the poles is to provide additional stability and reduce the effort needed to move around. In order to accomplish this, practice positioning your forward pole as you walk parallel to your forward foot, or for level ground. A bit behind to propel yourself when you are going uphill, and in front of it when going downhill. One last tip is to keep the poles as perpendicular to the ground as possible, with your arms in almost a tucked-in position close to your torso. This will greatly reduce the effort needed to move them. I hope this video has helped you to learn about trekking poles in general. Let's head back to the Explorer headquarters, where I'll give you my recommendations on poles for every budget. As promised, I'm including my 3 favorite hiking poles that coincidentally represent a different budget point each. For my entry level, I recommend the Trail Body trekking poles, with an approximate price of $30 at the time of filming this video. With an aluminum body, lever adjustment mechanisms, and cork handles, they make for the perfect entry-level pair of trekking poles. Added benefit, they come in 8 colors to suit your particular style. For my mid-range level, I recommend the Comperdale Peak Cork Anti-Shock trekking poles. Approximately costing $75 at the time of filming this video, they have reinforced aluminum body, anti-shock mechanisms, and cork grips, plus lever locking mechanisms, which make this one trusted pair of trekking poles my favorite choice for mid-range level. And lastly, my recommendation for advanced level is the Black Diamond Alpine Carbon Cork trekking poles. Considerably more expensive than my other recommendations so far, it sells for approximately $190 at the time of filming this video. Yes, you are partially paying for the marketing put into the brand, but also a lot of technology and full carbon fiber body, with cork handles and unique patented wrist strap adjustability design. Full disclosure, I don't own yet one of these, but I have been lucky enough to use them on occasion from a friend. Trekking poles can be found on any price range in between and even slightly lower or higher than my true recommendations. But the combination of materials and design plus personal experience make me inclined towards recommending these specific ones. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. Remember that you can always leave me a comment, especially if you have specific questions or video requests that are within the realm of what I can produce. Let your friends with similar interests know about this channel and join me by viewing one of my other videos and leaving comments as I continue to share my experience and knowledge with you. See you there, and remember, stay outside, stay safe, and leave no trace.